So today, I welcome you to the second in our series of talks, of sermons based on Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. And today, we'll focus on the second agreement, don't take anything personally. It's a tough one and a great gift. So our first sermon was entitled, Be Impeccable with Your Word. And that was the first of the four agreements. And the power of this agreement comes in its simplicity. As we all understand the impact of negative self-talk, or talking in a negative way, or gossip about others. But as we move into the second agreement, don't take anything personally, we realize that it is born from the first. In this agreement, we are invited not to take anything personally, regardless of who has said it or the way it was said. We all live in our own thoughts, our own sense of reality, and as Ruiz calls it, our own dream. With that, nothing other people do is about you. It is about themselves. Ruiz teaches that we will always have the choice as to what to let in. But let's face it, it's easier said than done, right? But through practices of mindfulness or meditation, we could develop an awareness that allows us to exercise our ability to remain calm and process what's being said and decide on our potential response, if any. So why do we take things personally? We take it personally, and this is, much of what I'm saying today, I want to make clear, is based on the teachings of this book and Ruiz. It's not always my specific teachings, but I'll put my input in there as we go through this. So we take it personally because we agree with what another person has said. This is what Ruiz says. As soon as you agree with a statement, you validate it. All people live within their own dream, he teaches in this Toltec tradition. And this is colored by their experiences, and in turn, the perceptions which they have developed from their experiences. When we take something personally, we are accepting that their dream or their experience is our truth. I thought that was very interesting. Ruiz states that taking things personally is the maximum expression of self-importance. Because when we make that assumption, then everything is about ourselves. Things that others say have nothing to do with you. It is about them. Has there ever been a time in your life when you've said or done something that could hurt another person without really intending to? You could raise your hand if you'd like, because I have. Yeah. It makes us human, doesn't it? And it's valuable to realize that we've done it too. And most of the time, people say things that are hurtful, not because they had intended to, but often we'll say things that are hurtful because we're not aware of what we're saying or because we're hurt. The saying, hurt people, right? So even if the people that caused our hurtings are not, even if the people that we might now hurt might not be the person who originally hurt us, we might do that without being aware, right? When people are in pain, they do things less consciously. When we act out of pain, we cause others pain. And we might see this in teenagers when they fight with their parents, often because they're not getting their way or upset. We've all seen it, whether it was when we were a teenager or whether we've had teenagers or whether we've been around other teenage nephews, nieces, friends, children. We've seen it. Their reaction is usually swift and typically without pause for any thought about what they're saying. They're acting out of their pain. So as Don Miguel urges, when somebody's voices a negative opinion, he shares not to take it personally because the truth is that person is dealing with their own feelings, beliefs and opinions. So many years ago, I was visiting the island of St. John's in the Virgin Islands, and a strange thing happened to me. I was disembarking from a ferry, and there was a large crowd of people. And as I was moving forward in a crowd of people, there were a crowd of people passing us. And oddly enough, a woman lunged towards me and swung at me to punch me towards my face. And I saw it coming. I noticed it, and I stepped aside to avoid the impact. And I quickly darted off to connect with my friends who were a little bit at a distance from me. So I share this because, was it personal that this woman wanted to hit me? The odds are against it. Yeah, she wasn't with me on the boat. Never seen each other before. But perhaps I look like someone that triggered her. Perhaps there was some pain in her that she wanted or felt compelled to release. Perhaps she was unstable. I don't know. But it wasn't about me. That's for sure. And I think especially in these odd interactions of conflict sometimes we have, especially with strangers, we could get very upset by it. And it's not about us. It's about their experience. And in a sense, we could bring that into our own lives about the people we interact with and have conflicts. We are not responsible for the words or actions of others, only our own reaction. We will be remembered by our own response, rarely by the action that preceded our response, right? We have the incredible power to dissipate situations or fuel them in our own reaction, which could boil into something much bigger than the initial stimulus if we let it. When we take things personally, we take offense. When we take offense, we defend ourselves. When we defend ourselves, we create conflict. When we create conflict, we inflict harm on ourselves and on others. It's important to remember that while you are the main character in your own life story, you're only a secondary character in everyone else's life story. By taking things personally, you're attempting to bring it back to you, when really, whatever is said is simply someone else's assumption or judgment within their story. Ruiz shares not to take anything personally because taking things personally sets you up to suffer. My mom, our mom, my brother and I, our mom, was a person who was very easily offended. She would hold on to perceived offenses, not just for days or weeks, but for decades. And when she'd meet new people, it didn't take very long for her to find an opportunity to share her stories of what terrible things someone said to her 10 or 20 years before. And it was honestly heartbreaking to watch. And life was often difficult with her because you were never quite sure what she would take offense to. And whatever she chose to take offense to was her perception. It wasn't a fact. And it not only made her suffer, but it made many of us around her suffer as well. I sometimes think that was one of my catalysts into being a minister, into helping people find ways of not suffering so much themselves, and ways out of suffering. Having grown up in this, I'd say maybe in my 20s or 30s, I heard this quote by Ken Keeves or Kies, not sure how to pronounce his last name right, but this is the quote, and I love it, and it really impacted my life. It is, "You add to the suffering of the world when you take offense, just as much as you do when you give offense." I'm going to repeat that again. You add to the suffering of the world when you take offense, just as much as you do when you give offense. That's something to chew on, isn't it? How often do we let the opinions of others stop us from our dreams or what we hope to do? Consider a simple rejection following a job interview or a romantic rejection and how it could impact our perception of ourselves. I remember reading once that, what's his name? Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders, had originally went out to, he had attempted to bring his recipe for his chicken to 110 different companies before anyone thought it was any good. Imagine having had that wherewithal, or that sense, or that belief in himself to continue trying after that, all that rejection. You have a choice what to let in, and it's critically important to understand that what we may perceive as a negative opinion is not a fact. Our power lies in how we choose to respond to whatever we may consider an affront and what we may take personally. It is our choice how we would like to perceive and respond to these events. Now, I know this is a challenging ask, right, to put this out, to choose how we may respond. But by bringing consciousness into what we're about to react to, you can have a different response, or a different result, let's say. A simple slow breath can help build an important space between the initial stimulus and your response, gifting you with perspective. Now, if you're part of this community, if you're a long-time attendee to this community, you would have heard me share this quote from Dr. Viktor Frankl. And I'm going to paraphrase it just to keep it simple. But Dr. Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, a brilliant book, brilliant man. Here's his quote: "Between stimulus and response there is a space. And in that space lies our power and our freedom." Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies, well, he actually says, lies our freedom, our decision to choose, and from that comes our power and our freedom. Understand that what happens around you is not about you. Always seek growth, a growth opportunity in how to respond, and in doing so, we can aim to live with more calm and compassion for ourselves and for those around us. When you make it a habit not to take things personally, you avoid many upsets in your life. Witnessing my mother's suffering made me acutely aware of how much pain people can experience by taking offense. Sometimes we take something personally, maybe because it's due to a scar that's within us, that was activated, right? Something that triggers us. And most of us have had times when we've acted in ways that we were annoyed with friends and family who did not mean to hurt us, but because we were triggered. And perhaps a gentle conversation could have changed everything rather than having reacted, causing a confrontation. Now, for me, my daily meditations help me to stay aware of what's going on inside me. If I'm taking something personally, it's, my meditations give me a chance to see what's going on in my thoughts, what's ruminating within me. And it gives me a chance to rethink it. It gives me a chance to reframe it in a way that will serve me and the world around me in the best way. I know that's not easy, but in that space does lie an opportunity. an opportunity to rethink things. Have you ever judged someone by their actions only to find out later that the reasons for their behavior was not what you thought? If somebody seems grumpy, sometimes we might assume, or distant, we might assume they're negative or unfriendly, or just not a nice person. The truth is, we tend to make assumptions and judgments about other people without knowing their full story. And we're going to talk more about this next week. And when we talk about the third agreement, no, in 2 weeks, when we talk about the third agreement, which is don't make assumptions. But here's a story. Well, you know what? I'm going to save this story for next week. I'm going to give you a little something to wait for. But to summarize where we've come to, don't take anything personally is a phrase that encourages us to not internalize or personalize the actions or words of others. It reminds us that other people's behaviors and communication is not necessarily a reflection of us, but rather a reflection of their own thoughts, emotions, and experiences. This second agreement encourages us to detach from reacting and instead to choose to respond. Not taking anything personally helps us to recognize that other people's behaviors is not a reflection of our self-worth or value. If we take others' behaviors personally, it can cause us to suffer. People have their own reasons and circumstances that we might not be aware of that cause them to act the way they do. It does not reflect on us. Taking things personally can lead to negative emotions and stress and can harm our relationships. It can cause hurt feelings and anger and defensiveness. When we take things personally, we are focusing on ourselves and how we are affected, rather than trying to understand the reasons for another person's behavior. It might be an opportunity for us to be empathetic, or to open our hearts a little more, to take the high road. And that often feels really valuable when you do. Not taking things personally can lead us to better decisions, a less stressful life, and can help us to cultivate and maintain more loving relationships. If I've not mentioned it before, I'm an Oprah Winfrey fan. I just love Oprah. She's amazing. And for Oprah, The Four Agreements happens to be one of her favorite books. And she often shares her favorite agreement is don't take anything personally. I think there's a lot of wisdom in it. And I think if we were more conscious of this, and certainly if I was more conscious of not taking things personally as a younger person, I would have lived a much easier life. It would have shifted my life so much, but I've come to do that more often now. And I'm very grateful that I could do that. I can't say I do it all the time, but I could find my way back there as best as I can. So I wanted to share with you one of my favorite Oprah quotes. And she says, when you know better, you do better. Oprah says, when you know better, you do better. So in closing, this series on the Four Agreements is a process that can help us to know better and to do better. It's a difficult path being human. And I think the spiritual invitation for us all is to do the work of healing. Healing within ourselves, healing within our relationships, and healing within the world around us, and with those we touch. And it always starts with us. May it be so. If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.